Okay, just before the tape recorder came to the end there, you were talking about
crises
and how Grandpa Green's hip was bad.
Yeah.
Was it an injury or a deterioration that caused that? You know.
Well, the doctors told him that he had TB of the bone, but I kind of wonder if they would call it that now. I think it was deterioration. It was an injury, though, to begin with. It was kicked by a horse, and they thought that was what...
Oh, so the injury started it all, but then it sort of deteriorated after the injury.
He was in the Spanish-American War, or he didn't go to battle, but he was in the army or cavalry. And I think they said the horse had kicked him when he was in the service, and they sort of thought that was what brought on this trouble with his hip. But anyway, that was during the Depression, and times were pretty hard. And then my mother was sick. She got sick. I remember when she had to have a hysterectomy. I didn't know what they called it at that time, but I was pretty young, and I remember she had to be in the hospital for about a month. And I remember going to this hospital in Peoria to see her. I think it was St. Francis Hospital. And I suppose it was pretty iffy as to whether she was going to survive, but she did at that time. But I think it took her down a lot, so that probably eventually was the reason for her death, because she got so run down, so anemic before she had the surgery. And then a couple of years later, she did die of a heart attack.
Your mother died of a heart attack?
Yeah. Well, she also had an inward goiter.
I was going to say, I thought she had a goiter, and I was thinking that's what she died from.
No, the goiter, I guess it caused pressure, but it was actually a heart attack. Her immediate cause of her death at that time. But I know they were worried about the hospital bills, and my dad would go down there and talk to him, and I think he said he was paying like $1 a week or something like that for a while, because that's all he could afford.
Paying $1 a week on the bill, you mean?
Yeah, on her hospital bill. I suppose he had paid some at the time of the surgery, but they didn't have insurance then. Everybody didn't have insurance like they do now. And I know when they went to the hospital to talk to him about it, why they said, well, that this wasn't enough. But they talked to some lawyer, and the lawyer said, well, as long as they were paying anything, they had to accept it. And they did. And I guess eventually it got paid off. But they were buying the house we were in, and the payments were $16 a month.
$16 a month, huh?
Yeah. And I know they used to worry about how they were going to get that $16 together.
Well, that sounds like quite a bit of money back then.
Well, I guess it was.
Was it a big house?
Well, it would really be a 2-bedroom house, I think. But there was one room they used for a bedroom, which was really more like an extra living room. So there was 2 bedrooms upstairs. Frank had one, and Melba and I had one. And the bathroom was upstairs. And my mother and dad slept downstairs in this room that was just off of the living room.
Oh, I see. It was a kind of wasn't really a bedroom, but they used it as one.
Yeah. But it had a big archway, a double door in between.
Yeah.
But I know there were curtains there that they could pull shut.
What was your happiest day? And if you can think of more than one happiest day.
Gee. I can't remember. Maybe when I moved to Earlville. Found out I was going to move to Earlville.
That was happy time.
Usually it was when I was going to be in Earlville, and I knew it, but I can't remember anything just real outstanding. When I was growing up is what you meant.
Yeah, when we were growing up.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible.
No, that's all right.
To not be able to think of any. But really, I guess I had a pretty happy life, so I don't know what stood out.
No real standout days.
Yeah.
How about the saddest days? Or saddest day?
I suppose that was when my mother died.
Yeah. How did you take that?
Well, she'd been sick for quite a while, so I guess I didn't really think about her, that she was going to die, though, because she was really getting better, and she had a heart attack and it went so quickly. But, you know, kids are pretty pliable. They just sort of accept things as they are.
So it didn't get you down for a long time?
No, I think I adjusted all right.
Yeah.
We had got to where we had to sort of be on our own quite a bit anyway, because she was in bed a lot. Yeah.
Did you have any visitors that came that were not in the family? Did you have, did your dad or mother have visitors that you remember?
Oh, yeah, my dad used to have printers come quite often to visit, and he was in the Masons, and sometimes he would give instruction to other men that were going to join the Masons.
Your dad would give instruction?
Yeah. And, there was one fellow named, his name was Lewis Powell, but they called him Buck. I remember he used to come a lot, and my mother never liked him. He was a lot younger than my dad. I think he was kind of a rowdy sort of a person, but he used to come and visit with my dad. And then there was another man named Mr. Tucker, who was another printer, and he'd come after my mother died, and he was living in, I guess, in Peoria, and he'd come to see my dad about every Sunday night, and Aunt Jessie was staying with us, and she used to get pretty mad because she didn't like it when he came for supper. And my dad would always ask him to stay, and Aunt Jessie didn't like that because he kept coming back every Sunday night.
Oh, she thought he was freeloading or something?
Yeah, and my dad said he thought the fellow was pretty in a bad way, and he said he thought sometimes he didn't actually get enough to eat, and so he wanted to help him a little bit. I didn't mind him. He was all right. But let's see. And then there was another man. There was a barber. He had a barber shop near us, and he was a friend of my dad's, and his name was Bill Arnold, and he used to come quite often, although he didn't come and stay for a meal. Sometimes he'd bring his little girl, whose name was Marilyn, and Melba and I used to get kind of fed up with her because she was kind of ornery. She was, I suppose, between 3 and 5 years old as time I remember, and we were quite a bit older, but she was just kind of mischievous and into everything, and we used to hate it when he would bring that Marilyn along, because he just sort of brought her and then forgot about her and left us to look after her. And she was into things, and really a little bit on the mean side too, the way I remember it anyway.
Do you remember anything about family feuds that went on?
No.
Really?
No, I don't remember any family feuds.
Like one part of the family being against the other part?
No, we never had any of that. I can't remember about it anyway. Maybe Melba could tell you probably more things than I can, because she can remember further back.
How did you celebrate birthdays or holidays?
Well, sometimes we'd go to Earlville over the 4th of July.
Oh, 4th of July, huh?
Yeah.
Were they having a special thing there in celebration?
I can't remember about that. It was just just to go someplace.
Something to do.
Yeah. Sometimes there were parades and really I can't remember too much about the celebrations. But it's 4th of July. If we were home, us kids have a few firecrackers, but nothing real exciting. But I remember having sparklers and thinking that was pretty great. But birthdays, I think they were mostly celebrated just within the family. My birthday was in November, so we weren't in Earlville then. And we didn't go in the wintertime. See, the roads were too apt to be bad.
Do you have friends over? Oh, I'm sorry.
I can't remember having, except once I had a birthday party, and then I had friends over. Yeah, and that was quite an event because I think it was the only birthday party I ever had. Kid party, that is.
Mm-hmm. How old were you then about?
I think I was 8. But the neighbor kids and some of the kids from school came. But I was always real shy. I didn't really like to go to birthday parties even.
Oh.
I'd be invited, and I can remember saying, "Oh, I didn't want to go." And Mel would get mad at me because she loved parties. And I never really cared about going, but I usually would have to because I was invited.
So you'd say you've been shy all your life, or at least kind of quiet?
Yeah.
Always.
I remember when I think I was in 1st grade, my Melba used to walk me to school because she was going too. It was in the same building, and then she'd meet me and take me home. And it was along in the wintertime. This birthday party was a little boy that lived, I think it was on a 1 block over from where we lived, but it was up the street further. And we went there. He invited the whole class. Every year he'd have a birthday party and invite the whole class, which was about 40 kids. And I remember walking with this whole group going over to his house to the party. And Melba was going to come and get me when the party was over, but when it was over, she wasn't there yet. And most all the rest of the kids went back to the school because they lived in the other direction. Most of them did. I don't know that they all did. And I went with the whole group back to the school because the rest of them did. And then when I got back to the school, I knew my way home. So then I walked on home, and I got home, and they were also surprised because I had come home all by myself. And said, well, I guess I knew my way to and from school. They didn't have to take me anymore. But it was after dark. When it was in the winter. It got dark early, and it was after dark. But after I got back there, I knew my way. But I didn't know my way right from this boy's house.
From the house.
And it would have been shorter to just come home.
Yeah.
But
were there any special things that would happen on Sundays at your house?
Well, we'd quite often go to Sunday school to the Methodist church.
In Peoria?
Yeah, in Peoria. Melba and I did anyway. I think Frank sort of got, so he didn't want to go. He was older then. And sometimes my parents would go to church, but not real often.
Mm-hmm. Same church?
Yeah, and my mother would go sometimes, and I remember going with her. They used to have Sunday evening services sometimes. And I remember going with her to church a few times when I was little. And once there was a wedding, and it was just a young couple that wanted to get married, and they were there in the congregation, and they just called them, like a baptism or something. They just called them up to the front, and that was the wedding ceremony right there. It wasn't any big do like they have now. And I remember being kind of impressed with that. But when I got a little older, I started going to the Congregational church because some of my girlfriends went there. and they had a Sunday school teacher that I liked, and they had a junior choir, and so I went there for a few years. I guess probably up until the time I left Peoria. June Wallace went there.
And her name was later June Harris, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we always thought that was kind of funny that we both grew up and married somebody named Keith Harris.
That's right. Her husband's name was Keith Harris.
Yeah. He's still alive, I guess. But she died.
Did you have in Peoria there, did you have indoor plumbing?
Yes.
You did.
Yeah.
So did you take baths every Saturday night or more often or less often?
Oh, it was at least once a week.
Yeah.
I guess that was pretty standard though, at least for kids, to have a bath about every once a week. I guess sometimes it was often.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in there? That question?
I should say that some of these questions I'm asking are coming from a book called "It's Your Story, Pass It On," and by Mary Louise Colgan and Thea Simmons van der Ven. It's just some questions that just to get old people to start talking.
Well, we did have indoor plumbing, but we did not have a hot water heater. And I remember my mother always carrying water in a big kettle, carrying it upstairs and putting it in the tub for me when I was little. Of course, when I got older, I had to do that myself. But we never, that I remember, I don't think we ever did have a hot water heater. We always had to carry water.
From the stove?
Yeah, heated on the stove.
Was there one of those containers for water built into the stove? I know some of them had that.
No, it wasn't that kind of a stove. You're thinking of a cook stove.
Yeah, you didn't have a cook stove.
No, we had maybe they did at some time earlier. But about the earliest I can remember is a regular gas stove.
Gas stove.
It was kind of up on legs, and the oven was up on top. And it was city gas. I remember my mother heating water on the stove and carrying it up.
Did you have electricity? You surely must have had electricity in your house in Peoria.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. But when we go up to Earlville, out to Uncle Frank's, they had kerosene lamps, and for some reason I always thought that was kind of neat. When I was a kid, anyway.
Yeah. Did you have a special teddy bear or an imaginary friend or anything like that you remember?
I don't remember an imaginary friend, but I had a teddy bear.
Yeah.
I remember that. It was kind of a small one, and I guess when I was a baby I had it, and I pulled the ears off of it. But I can remember playing with that, even without the ears, for a long time. I must have been 4 or 5 anyway. By the time that, I don't know, whatever happened to it, I suppose it just fell to pieces. It had sawdust in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was stuffed with sawdust.
What was its name?
Just Teddy.
Teddy, huh?
Yeah.
What did your mother and father tell you about as a child? Any stories that you really treasure or remember?
No, I can't really remember about that.
They never really told you stories much.
They probably did, but I suppose my mother was pretty busy, and so was my dad, and I think Melba was more apt to read to me.
Yeah, when you were little, she was probably about the time of when she was learning to read, and it was a good practice for her. And do you remember any stories that she read or anything? Or is it just...
No, I really can't.
Yeah.
I do remember when I started the first grade, I was, as I said, I was real shy, and I was so afraid of the teacher. I was terrified of her, and I guess I wasn't doing very well in reading. And Melba started getting me books from the library. And when I started practicing at home, why I got along a lot better. And I remember the teacher telling my mother that, or Melba or somebody, that I was doing a lot better with. But I was so shy. I was just so scared to death of that old Mary Anthony.
That was her name?
Yeah. I felt like she was about 100 years old, and she didn't have much patience, but I suppose she might have been 50. I don't know. But I just remember being so afraid of her.
This was your first grade teacher?
Yeah. And I was so glad when school was out, and my mother told me I didn't have to go to school anymore for quite a while at least. And then when school started again, I was scared again because I thought I would have the same teacher. But I didn't. I had another lady, and she was young, and her name was Cornelia Debler. And she was a real sweet girl, and I just loved her, and everything was perfect then.
Yeah, I remember, too, having teachers that I just really was afraid of or didn't like.
It kind of reminded me of when Don was in first grade. He wasn't doing too great because he and the teacher just sort of didn't, kind of a personality conflict, I guess. I don't know whether he was afraid of her or what, but when he got in second grade, and he had Arlene Gibson, he got along fine.
Yeah. Was it Holman? Miss Holman first?
No. His first grade teacher was Mrs. Olson. Let's see. She was from Leland, I think.
Oh. I don't remember her.
I can't think of her first name either. But she was really a nice lady, but somehow she and Don just didn't take to each other, I guess.
Don was pretty active.
Yeah, and he was so nervous that he couldn't concentrate, and he probably got on her nerves.
What kind of pets did you have? Did you ever have any pets?
Yes, lots of them.
Who were they?
Well, the first one I can remember was a dog named Ring. He was shepherd and collie mix, I think. He was black, and he had a white ring around his neck. And that was really Frank's dog. But they got him when I was a baby. And they said that we kind of grew up together. And I do remember old Ring. He used to be tied out by the back porch. He was an outdoor dog.
Oh, you didn't let him in?
Once in a great while.
He was probably kind of big.
Yeah, he was. He was a big dog. But, and then I had another... I'd pick up all the strays that came, stray dogs that would come. There was one named Bob. We called him that because his tail was cut off so short.
Oh.
Bobtail.
Bobtail.
Yeah. And then there was another one called Spot. I think there were some others in between, too, but those were the ones I really remember. And cats. I think mostly the cats were just strays that I kind of petted and stuff, but didn't really keep them in the house until once when I was, I don't know, must have been 10, somewhere around there. We did take one home from Earlville, from Uncle Frank's farm. We brought it down there, and his name was Skeezix.
Skeezix?
Yeah, called him Skeets for short. And that was before my mother died, because I remember Frank never liked cats. And he was driving the car, and he was going up to Earlville to get Melba, who was spending the summer up there. And I wanted him to bring this cat home, and he said, he didn't like cats. He wasn't going to bring any cat now. But when they came, why, here come Melba bringing in this box with the cat in it. Because Melba wouldn't take anything off of Frank. If she was going to do something, he couldn't stop her. She was pretty peppery. And she wanted the cat, too. And so we had it around there, and Melba took a lot of care of it. And one day, though, when I came home from school, the cat was dead. And later I found out that the reason it died was because she thought the cat had fleas, and she sprayed it with some flea spray. And she didn't know that it would kill the cat, but it did. But she told me that years later what happened to it. I thought it just got sick, died. Well, it did, but that was the cause of it, I guess.
But she felt bad about that.
Yeah, she did. She felt awful because she liked the cat, I think, just as well as I did.
Did you ever go to a circus or any kind of entertainments down there in Peoria?
Yeah, I vaguely remember going to circuses a time or two, but not very often. I don't. It might have been only been once. I kind of remember a man on stilts, and he was dressed in red and white striped pants and a navy blue jacket with stars on it, like the flag, and a big top hat. And he was supposed to be Uncle Sam. And I know at first I thought he was really a man that was that tall. And then later, of course, I found out that he was on stilts. Can't remember much else
about the circus.
Yeah.
Right? Did you like to play outside all year round?
Yes.
You liked the winter as well as the summer?
Yeah, I can remember.
I remember you telling me one time that you always liked the winter.
Yeah, I always did. I didn't mind it.
What kind of things did you do outdoors?
Oh, games for hide and seek and just running around and pretending. And remember when I was pretty young, my mother had a clothesline pole. And right next to that pole, there was a little stump where there'd been a tree. And I used to go out there and take nails and pound into that stump. Just because I like to pound, I guess. And standing on that stump. But, June and Norma and I, and later it was Lillian, we would just run around. A lot of hide and seek, I guess. And the neighborhood kids at night in the summer, with a whole big group of them would get together and play things like that too.
Did your foot bother you when you were a kid, running around and playing and stuff? It was pretty much healed.
Yeah, I can remember wearing a brace.
Yeah.
On it till I was about 4 years old, and I was out to Uncle Frank and Aunt Clara's. My parents were there for the weekend, and their house was up kind of a hill, and I ran down the hill, and the brace broke, and I was a little bit worried for fear I was in trouble because I had broken my brace. But my mother said, "Well, you don't have to wear it anymore." Then the doctor said that when you're able to run around enough for the brace to break, you didn't have to wear it anymore.
Wow, that was a relief.
Yeah, I was kind of thrilled about that. This is getting pretty long, isn't it?
Oh, well.
I think anybody's ever going to want to listen to all this.
No, I don't think anybody will ever listen to this. But, there's a little tape left. Why don't we just finish this tape, unless you're really getting tired?
No, I'm not tired, but I just thought people get tired of listening to it.
Well, if they do, they can always shut it off.
Yeah.
Were you self-conscious at all about your foot and your leg?
Yes, I was.
I suppose,
yeah.
Especially when you were a young girl, I suppose.
Yeah.
High school.
Yeah, I don't think it bothered me a whole lot. But when I was little, I can remember some little kids, like when I was in first grade, calling me skinny leg. And of course it was skinny.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And that time, little girls always wore dresses.
Yeah.
And I remember not liking that very much, but I survived all right.
So that was a nickname that you had that you didn't care for?
Well, nobody else. It was just that one kid that did that.
Did your mother ever sing to you?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I can vaguely remember sitting in her lap and her rocking, singing Rockabye Baby. And I was pretty young. I was old enough, so I must just starting to remember things, but I can remember that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she used to sing hymns quite a bit around when she was working. I don't mean that was especially to me, but I do remember her singing. And she used to sing Bringing in the Sheaves quite a bit. And there was a picture hanging on the wall in the living room of a flock of sheep. And somehow I got that in my mind that bringing in the sheaves was bringing in the sheep. I still remember that. But of course, when I got older, I realized that wasn't so. But at the time, I thought sheaves were sheep. But she wasn't, like a real good singer, but I enjoyed hearing her, and I know a neighbor girl was there, Norma Woodruff, and we were talking about people singing, and I said, well, my mother can sing good, and Norma said, yeah, she can. She said, she ought to sing on the radio, and then I told my mother that, and she just laughed.
So, she didn't play any instruments or anything, did she?
No.
Or your dad either?
No. Nothing that I ever remember anyway. But not too many people did then.
Yeah.
Couldn't afford to buy the instrument well, I suppose if you were in school. But I don't think they even had band in school very much.
You never played any musical instruments, did you?
No.
Did you ever wish you could, or...?
Not particularly. When I got a little older, when they were having band, my dad asked me, they sent home a paper or something, they asked me if I wanted to, but I was never very good at, never really learned to read music very much, and I think I was afraid I'd show my ignorance, and I didn't want to. I didn't want to try to learn to play.
How about art? Did you ever do any painting?
No, yeah, I used to just not only just kid stuff. I mean, but we used to draw and color.
Not serious adult painting?
No.
Do you remember anything about the first day you went to school?
Yes, I do. I can remember my mother took me, and this lady was named Mary Anthony, and she was all smiles, and she seemed real friendly. But the next day I changed my mind about her and decided I didn't like her, and I was afraid of her because she was trying to make kids behave. And I don't remember that I misbehaved, but some of them did. And when I heard her scolding these other children, it frightened me so that I was really afraid to do most of anything.
Your mother didn't do a lot of heavy scolding then, is that it? You weren't used to that kind of... No. Well,
I don't mean she never got mad at me, but she did. She'd get after me if I was doing things I shouldn't or didn't mind, but not like that lady did, taught school.
So your mother took you to school on the first day?
Yeah.
And did you just go directly to the classroom?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And your mother left you there. How did you feel when your mother left? Did you feel empty or something?
I think the very first day went and just the teacher got my name and everything, and then we went home again. But the next day, when school really got started, Melbo took me.
Oh. What did you wear? Do you remember? This is a memory
I
test.
can't remember if it was the very first day, but I remember I had one, I think it was kind of a knit blue dress. Somebody had given it to me. It was a hand-me-down, and it was embroidered all around the skirt, kind of big swirly design. I do remember that, but I don't know whether it was the first day.
Yeah. What about equipment? What kind of equipment did you take to school in those days? I suppose crayons.
Pencils and crayons, I guess.
Out of your schooling there in Peoria, which was your favorite teacher? Was it that second grade teacher?
I think it was Miss Debler, yeah.
Debler, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But Mrs. Kirkov was nice too.
Which grade was that?
That was third grade.
Yeah.
But there were, most of them I liked fairly well. I remember first grade was Miss Anthony, second grade Miss Debler, third grade Mrs. Kirkov, fourth grade Miss Davis. She was okay, but I didn't practically worship her like I did Miss Debler.
Yeah.
And fifth grade was Miss Ross, or I'm not sure. She was a music teacher in fifth grade, but I can't remember. Funny. Sixth grade was Miss Ryan, Nellie Ryan. And seventh grade was Miss Conlon. She was nice enough, but she had some sort of a problem. I don't know whether she had sort of like epileptic seizures or what, but I remember when she'd get mad at some of the boys, you know how boys can be at that age, like about 12, she would cross her arms and she'd go, you can't see that on the tape, but kind of
shake her head back.
Kind of shake her head, and like she get started and she just couldn't stop, you know.
Oh, she'd get started with this jerking back and forth motion with her head.
I kind of wonder now if maybe she had, that epilepsy is just a real minor.
Petit mal.
Yeah, petit mal. But she was a nice lady, though, and I liked her. And then in eighth grade, it was two teachers, Miss Ross and Miss Ringel. It was a big class. And
so did they do team teaching?
They did team teaching. One
would teach for a while. And then
one would teach English and music or some other. There were two Mrs. Ross. Mm-hmm. I can't remember whether one of them was the teacher I had in fifth grade or not. But it was the other one that I had in eighth grade. Mm-hmm.
How did you do in school? Did you get good grades, medium grades, bad
medium,
grades?
I think.
Medium, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some things I was pretty good at, but not as good as you. I guess I never was as interested in school as you were. But I did all right. I never failed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you ever tease other kids?
Tease other kids?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess I did a little bit, maybe. But it was just a kind of a game, like.
Just playing.
Yeah.
Nothing where you had a vendetta against
Oh, no. Nothing like that.
Where is June Harris still alive now? Or
no.
She died?
She died about 2 years ago, I think. Mm-hmm. They're in Peoria. She always lived in Peoria. Mm-hmm.
Did you correspond with her up until the time she died? Or?
Yeah. Not real regular, but always Christmas and birthdays.
Yeah. How old were you when you first asked, is there a real Santa Claus? Or did somebody just tell you?
I think some other kids just, I heard them talking, there's always kids that will say that. And so I knew there really wasn't, but I was pretending that I thought there was because I thought my mother would be upset if she thought I didn't believe in Santa Claus. And one day there was a little girl came there, Virginia Watrous was her name. She was a year younger than I am. And she just came to play, and when she was getting ready to leave, my mother said, "Well, Virginia, what's Santa Claus going to bring you for Christmas?" And she said, "Nothing." And she said, "Nothing? Why?" And she said, "Because there isn't any such thing as Santa Claus." And my mother looked at me and she said, well, there is two, isn't there, Margie? And I said, no, I know there's not. Of course, I wasn't going to admit that I still believe in Santa Claus. I was a year older than Virginia. And so after that, there was no more pretense. But I think it was a year or two that I was.
So that's when your mother found out that you knew the story about Santa Claus.
Yeah, but I was just afraid that she would be upset if she thought I didn't believe in it.
Do you remember any particular gifts that you got for Christmas that were especially welcome?
Yeah, I got a doll that would close its eyes.
Close its eyes?
Yeah, and it had real hair, and I named her Lucille because there was a little girl sat in front of me at school. Her name was Lucille Adams, and I thought she was so cute, and I named this doll Lucille.
How old were you when you got that?
I think I was probably first grade, because that was, or maybe second, one of the real low grades anyway. And remember Melba was, I don't know if she got a new doll, but she had a doll. And I remember playing with dolls that day so much with her because I had gotten a new one. And then a little bit later, I think I might have been about 7 that year. Why, there was a department store there in Peoria, but it was right in the neighborhood where we lived, not downtown. And my mother used to take me there.
That's all right.
Take me there a time or two. You want to answer that?
Maybe I better just a second. Give you a break here.
You ready?
Yeah, and you're talking about Christmas presents?
Oh yeah, well, this was a birthday gift. My mother took me to this Johnson's department store there in Peoria, and I saw this big doll. It had a clown suit on, and the doll had red hair, but just painted on hair, and I really thought that was nice. And then a couple of weeks later, I guess I had a birthday, and they got me that big doll, and how thrilled I was, and I named it Robert Wayne because Bob Atherton was a little toddler at that time, and he had red hair, and I thought he was the cutest thing that ever was, and I named this doll Bobby after him.
Well, gosh, no, Bob Atherton must have been born.
I think he was born in 1925. Or I think that's what.
Oh, Bob. No, I'm thinking of Jean's son, Bob, but you're thinking of...
Oh, this is Stuart Atherton.
Stuart's Bob, yeah, okay. I was going to say, Bob Atherton is not much older than I am. Okay. So, go ahead.
I remember getting a tricycle once for my birthday, but that wasn't Christmas. I really can't remember. We always had Christmas. They had some gifts, but sometimes it must have been kind of slim. When I got that Lucille doll, I think that was almost the only thing I got.
When did you get your first bicycle?
Well, that wasn't until I was in high school, and I was staying out to Margie and Carl's. And Laverne Carter had a bicycle, and I learned to ride hers, and so then my dad did get me a used bicycle, and I used to ride around out in the country out there. But nobody could afford bicycles.
Yeah.
It was during the Depression. Didn't have any money. By that time, old Frank and Melma were out on their own, and so my dad could afford to do a little more for me, I guess.
Mm-hmm. When you were young, what kind of tasks did you have to do around the house?
Oh, I had to dry dishes and sometimes wash them, usually dry. Mel would have to wash, and dust, which I still hate to do. And that was the main things. But, pick up stuff and things like that.
You had to make your bed, did you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, little things that most kids are required to do. Mm-hmm. Set the table and put away, dry the dishes and put them away when they're done. Shake the tablecloth outdoors. We always had a tablecloth. Not an oilcloth.
What do you like to remember about your first sweetheart?
Just that it was kind of fun to go to the movies, I guess.
Yeah. Was this when you were in Earlville?
Yeah. Yeah, I went with a fellow named Charles Kellogg for a while. Chuck, they always called him, and we went to the movies usually. Sometimes dances, but I don't really remember anything outstanding about it.
Yeah. And was it after you went with him that you went with Dad?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing a picture somewhere of you and Charles Kellogg.
Yeah, there's snapshots.
Yeah. Were you ever afraid of the dark?
Yeah, when I was little I was. I remember my mother used to leave the hall light on for me, just so that I wouldn't be completely in the dark.
But then you outgrew that eventually.
Oh, yes.
I remember being afraid of the dark, too.